all of these holidays we celebrate are all originally pagan holidays. And I'm sure most people that listen to this podcast are aware. However, I don't necessarily like just writing them off as pagan holidays, because that it insinuates or like underlyingly means that because they're not Christian, so they're not things good.
Yeah,
they're not good things.
Pagan has a negative connotation, but really pagan just means like earth-based wisdom or earth-based ritual.
Yeah. So that comes back to animism.
There you go.
So animism is the word that we should be using, because animism means animate, things that are alive, things that are naturally alive, and everything has life within it. And so that was the original kind of understanding, right? Or I should say the first religion was the animist religion. And every culture at the times that they were really attuned to the natural cycles and rhythms of the world and to the cosmos, they had their own word for it. Especially in here in Hawaii, we call different things like ho'omana, like to create mana. Even in like Lakota languages like Lilo and then Takskan, like they have different words. And some of these things you shouldn't even be saying, So when we talk about the calendar, it's like, oh, January 1st. Why is that? Oh, because it comes from an old empire, right? From Caesar of Rome. And he decided this on this day because of political and tax purposes and everything. And that's why we have, and if you're going to start a business in the United States, it's coming back to the empire of Rome, where it's like, now on this date, you can start this business and you don't have to worry about it to the next tax year. See what I mean? So all of the calendar that we're moving with, even though we have holidays, is strictly for the marketplace. It's strictly for business. It's strictly for corporate. So if we were to go to a true natural calendar, it would be something that is actually a combination between a solar cycle and a lunar cycle. Because a calendar that incorporates a lunar cycle is 29 and a half days. And that brings us awareness to the subtle impacts of the forces from the moon. And then the sun is one that we had adopted for 365 days because it fits the most. And over time, it accounts for the changes that happen over the years and seasons with the rotation of the earth. So a meaningful calendar would be a combination of the two, I believe. It would take into account the seasons and the productivity of food, because that's the basis of everything. There is no civilization, there is no empire, there is no nation without food and water. So the interconnection of human life would bring about a meaningful calendar. So the reasons why equinoxes and solstices are so important is because when we base ourselves on the calendar, that supports the understanding of the sun and the moon, then we already know we're living in a giant clock that was created by a magnificent force of creator God, of great mystery, of aqua, nakua, whatever you choose to call, is going to bring us back into ourselves, and hormonally we'll be healthier, like psychically we'll like be further advanced just by changing our calendar. I truly believe that. We'll be more attuned to each other as a people. Road rage will probably end. Because why is everybody rushing? There is no need. We already know what's going to happen. So we might as well take our time with the things that are truly important in our lives. So the biological, emotional rhythm of a calendar is just as important. A living calendar is what I would propose.
Ooh, a living calendar. What is a living calendar?
Pretty much is like how I say is like, at what times are we restorative and what's happening, in the different environments. It's like we have this one calendar so the whole world can all shape itself towards that one thing. But if you have a living calendar, then it taps you back into the community of life that surrounds you where you're at. So it's not a personal one, but like everybody's following it. It's almost like the Farmer's Almanac, that used to come out back in the day. I don't know if many of the younger generation know that. But to have a living calendar would mean we all in our different areas, kind of like how we do time zones, we would have a certain calendar. And then at certain ceremonies where we would all gather, say like in California or in Maui, we would all adapt and adopt that calendar for the time that we're there. And then we'd come back home. So it's like now the culture is just naturally embedding itself into people because of how we adopt calendars, Yeah. So if we can mark time that reflects the rhythms of the natural world and human life and find that interconnection between, the web, where it's not just rigid and mechanical and still accounting for, the changes that need to come to keep order, I think, our generations, our children, they'll benefit from that. because they will naturally be tied to birth, growth, death, and renewal.
There it is. I feel like this is low-hanging fruit for a society that is talking so much about mental health and all of these like kind of buzzword things that come up as a result of dysfunction. It's like, what would it actually take to reset the calendar? To go, you know what? We've been messing around with this Roman system and it hasn't been serving us. Yeah. You know,
let's serving the few.
True.
But yeah, so like, let's get to this point of like rituals and ceremonies once again. And so like, you know, a big part of it that I always hear from, especially with parents in the United States, is like, there isn't enough time for maternity leave. There isn't enough time for fathers to recover, mothers to recover from that. So imagine that if we had a calendar that understood those rhythms and those cycles and those seasons, that we were able to group everybody who was going to give birth in this particular month. They were all registered and assigned to have this amount of rest time. And then everybody else would just help cover the back end. And then the cycles would continue. So then now we're promoting more families, you know, that are attuned and contributing members of society, rather than, you know, a number of a statistic, you know, or just somebody who is replaceable because they're just, you know, worker number 3 out of 1,000. You know, everybody's going to be seen as human beings just because they changed this calendar. That's my ideas anyway.
Yeah. You know, agriculture itself is another form of technology, which has gotten completely out of hand in many ways. We've previously talked about monocropping on Maui and things like that. And I mean, now they're trying to bypass, you know, agriculture altogether and grow meat in laboratories and probably growing fruit in laboratories and all this stuff.
It's all part of that transhumanist agenda, man.
I want to know more about that. But I was just saying, like, the calendar would also be aligned to the agriculture as well, and maybe to these not new, but the old ways of permaculture and, you know, agroforestry. I know that you're also very interested in all of these things.